I think we are very blessed in the world of sewing today. We have so many opportunities to share our sewing knowledge through classes, television, travel, books, CDs, DVDs, and the internet. One person's work inspires another so often and so easily, and we look forward to hearing about sewing innovations and trying new things with the tips and tricks we've discovered. Come with me to my sewing room and discover more blessings today. I am very glad you're here, and you are very welcome. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today Kari Mecca. Kari is the owner and designer of Carry Me Away. She is the author of 4 books, a frequent contributor to So Beautiful magazine, and a teacher at the Martha Pullen School of Art Fashion in Huntsville. Kari, welcome to the show.
Martha, thanks for having me.
Oh, I cannot wait for you to share these wonderful ribbon trims that we're going to be talking about today.
Well, whimsical trims from a stick. So we're going to take a simple stick, we're going to make trims and flowers, and they're easy and you're going to love them, and they can go on just about anything.
Flowers on a stick, trim on a stick. I
right.
love it. I love it. Let's go ahead.
Nothing more basic than a stick. So I have my stick. I have a piece of ribbon, and I've chosen a patterned ribbon. It doesn't always have to be a satin solid ribbon in a pretty pink. So I've chosen something with blue and green, and I'm going to tape the end right at, it actually says start here, so isn't that helpful? And I'm just going to twist the stick and wrap the ribbon. Now don't try to wrap the ribbon around. I mean, it's too difficult. Just hold the ribbon and twist the stick. And do you notice I'm leaving a little space between my wraps? That's because I need to slide that up, and we'll put them all close together, which is much easier than trying to do it as you wrap. And we also need the wraps to be just a little loose so we can actually get them off the stick. So we're going to lay that down when we come to the end. Then we're going to get our masking tape, and this is 1/4 inch tape, and you want to use a low tack tape. There's all kinds on the market, but what's more important is that I would look for something that's about 1/4 inch wide. So we'll put it down the center, we'll flip our stick over, and we're going to tape both sides. We don't want those wraps to move. So we'll tape again on this side. Don't tape on your stick or else you can't get your wraps off. So here's a stick that's already wrapped, and I'm going to take the tape off at the very beginning so that, again, I can get my wraps off, and then I'm just going to slide that, and all the wraps stay nice and secure. And then we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew right along the edge, about 1/8 inch from the fold. So let's see, we're just going to use a basic straight stitch, and as I said, sew right along the fold or the edge of the wraps.
This is pretty magical, making ribbon trim on making flowers and trims on a stick. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
It's very, and a straight stitch, I mean, how hard is that?
Not hard at all.
That's right. If you have an edge stitching foot, that's a good alternative as well. And then we're going to take it to the board, and we're going to pull our tape off each side. So can you see how close I've gotten to the edge? Not too far away, but not right on the edge either. And then we're just going to simply remove our tape. Oops. Turn it over and pull the tape from this side as well. And can you see what pretty loops we have? And
oh, Kari, those are beautiful. It's
exactly
just
the
magical.
same.
It's just magical.
Exactly the same size. They're perfectly spaced, and really it took very little effort. No marking dots and going on and on. Now, from here, you could put piping on there, spaghetti like is shown on our sample dress.
Spaghetti bias, fabric.
Spaghetti bias in matching colors or contrasting colors. But what I'm going to show you now is actually how to make a flower. So from there, I have another piece of trim here. And we're going to, if you have a raw end, we're going to turn that down. Ours is trimmed close, we don't have to worry. And we're just simply going to wrap that around once and hold it twice. And again, I just hold it on this one side And this was made for 3 times around. Really wouldn't go much bigger than that unless you want something that looks more like a mum, because it gets a little loopy. So from there, now this is the important part, we're going to turn this over and I'm just going to stick a pin right where I've been pinching it and holding it. But can you see how loose those wraps are? They're not all tightly coiled together. You want your flower to grow. So from here, I'm just going to stick a couple of pins all the way across my flower. Can you see that? And you can actually adjust so everything's just centered slightly. And then I would just stitch across. Now you don't want to pull those stitches tight. We're just going to leave them real loose. 3-4 stitches and it's finished. So from there, let's talk about what else we can do. We've done a single loop, which is a single loop flower, 1 ribbon, 1 trim. Now these are double-sided satin ribbons. Can you see that? There's 2 colors woven into the pattern. Blue on one side, green on the other. And I've also put 2 colors, 2 pieces together in 2 different widths. Now I've turned 1 blue side up, 1 green side up. So this is a multicolor, multi-width trim, and we're again just going to treat it the same way. Tack our ends with tape, wrap and slide. Now I have a couple finished samples to show you here. Here's a pink, same size ribbon, same size. Here is double color folded over, and I'm going to show you that next.
Okay, so we have sewing inspirations and more techniques from Kari.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Kari. Kari, I call these happy clothes. Talk to us about these wonderful trims.
Well, we have a double loop trim with a flower center. We have looped spaghetti bias. We have a double loop around the edge of the yoke. And then
so cute.
Knee patches, which, you know, they're not really in style, but when you make them cute like that, I think they work.
Oh, knee patches, isn't that fun? And this adorable trim. Oh, look at this. Tell me about this.
Rings of trim stacked to make with a button with a flower center, and then just some tendrils just for fun, just frilly, sweet, you know.
Adorable, adorable. What is this then?
Well, this is a corsage of spaghetti bias flowers in 2 colors, and we just put it wherever we can. There's spaghetti all over the dress, and there's of course a flower toward the hem. Just fun.
I love all the different fabrics mixed together. Oh, this is so cute. Now, you know I love ballet, so anything associated with a tutu makes me happy.
Well, every little girl loves to twirl. The top is made from rat tail cord, which, you know, it's been around forever. And
rat tail cord.
Yeah, but it's beautiful
in
a rainbow.
It really is precious.
And we've just put flowers together, added trim to the sleeves. Now it's a purchase baby knit, so you don't have to make everything from the beginning. It's okay to trim something.
And look at the little flowers and then the tutu.
A chiffon tutu, and of course more flowers and leaves.
I think this must be really easy since you used a purchase knit.
Oh, very easy.
And to just put the trims on. Now that's fun too when you don't have too much time to sew.
Well, especially if you're giving it for a gift. I mean, it can be washed and dried. It's easy to use and it's fun to wear.
Kari, I love all of this. And now she has another surprise for you. A So Quick, So Easy project. Kari, what cute little shoes and a headband.
You can put these flowers on just about anything. This is a double looped rose, and so we've done them in velvet here on the tips of slippers. Now this is good for women, doesn't just have to be for little girls. And then also I've done a headband with a large rose on the band, which is purchase of course, some quick folded leaves, and then some dangling roses, and I actually call them pom-poms because there's 2 roses on each little dangling stem. So I've showed you basic trims, but let's just talk about how to make this double loop trim for the large roses. So we're going to go ahead and tape at the beginning and wrap our stick, and actually I have a sample already made, so I'm just going to skip to that. Here we go. We have the tape is already applied, and we're going to apply 2 strips this time because we're going to sew down the center as opposed to the side. We're actually going to tape both sides, and then we'll slide that off the stick and take it to the sewing machine. Now, I already have a sewn sample, so we're just going to set this aside. It's a basic straight stitch, super easy. So can you see? It's sewn down the center.
Absolutely.
Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take off the tape on one side only. So here we go. Oops, excuse me. Now, to get our double loops, I mean, you can see we have 2 loops, but they're laying flat. So we're going to fold it.
Oh.
Super easy. Now I've sewn slightly off center that first seam. So we're going to fold it and we're going to offset our peaks. Now we're having the tape on the outside, right? We removed one side of the tape and we're going to sew right along the edge. Now, I happen to have a finished sample of that. So here we go. Here's our double loops. Can you see that? The edges are slightly offset and we've sewn along the entire edge. Again, just 1/8 inch from the fold. Now, to make these large roses, and they're so pretty. I mean, everybody can wear a rose. Any age, it doesn't matter. I have a little piece of ribbon and I'm just going to tie a knot, okay? We're going to fold it with our ends together. We're going to fold down our raw edges, wrap it around once, oops, excuse me, twice, 3 times. Keep your wraps loose, and then we're just going to hand sew with a needle and thread. It's that easy.
That really is. It looks like it's been folded and twisted. You know, some flowers you fold and you twist and that is so easy. You literally just wrap it around and around. Kari, you have invented magic.
It's fun to do, and like I said, it's taking the hand-rolled rose to the sewing machine.
It really has. Kari, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now I have some heirloom quilting to share with you. I'm so thrilled to have as my guest today Nina McVeigh. Nina is an educator trainer for Bernina of America. Nina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha.
Wonderful, wonderful crazy patch. And I understand every bit of this was done in the hoop.
Yes.
Now that's a bit magical, so I'd like for you to share with us exactly how that was done.
You're right. It was all done in the hoop, sewing the fabrics together, the embellishing, the decorative stitches on top of the seams, all done in the embroidery hoop. So let me show you those steps that you need to take. First of all, because this is done, crazy quilting is done on a base fabric, in order to keep this as lightweight as possible, I don't use a base fabric. What I do use is a poly mesh stabilizer. It's lightweight and yet it's sturdy enough to hold all the stitching and all the fabric that it needs to. So my very first step is going to be, the machine will stitch out the parameter of the block, and I need to know that because as I lay pieces of fabric on here, I need to know how big they need to be. So it's going to sew that square for me. And then it's also going to sew the very first piece that needs to be down. These are guidelines. Once I have these guidelines in place, I'm going to lay a piece of fabric to cover that shape in the center of my block. And then repeat that same stitching and it will hold down my center piece of fabric. I'm then going to sew, or the machine is going to sew a line of stitching where my next piece of fabric needs to go. So once that's sewn, I can lay down a piece of fabric. One of the most confusing things about crazy quilting, whether you're doing it in the embroidery unit or just on your machine, is where to lay the piece of fabric that goes on next, because you always lay it on and it gets flipped. So just a little hint, whenever you're doing this around this shape in this block, you're always laying your fabric to cover the center. So once the seam is sewn, you're flipping it out that way. Once I've flipped this out and I go to the next step in the embroidery, it's actually going to do my decorative stitching. And you can choose any number of stitches to put there. And then it's going to sew my next line where my next piece of fabric is going to go. And you will just keep building your block all the way around this center piece until you have this embroidered crazy quilt block. So let's go to the machine.
Let's see.
We are ready to stitch, so we are going to stitch out that first portion, which again is going to be that outline. And we always have to let the machine get started and secure that thread. And once it sews, again, the parameter, and it's going to stop so that I have that option to continually change colors. I don't need to change colors. I'm just going to press the button and go to the next thread, which is going to be that pentagon shape in the center. We'll sew that. What I like about this is you would actually design your block in software, and there's a lot of decorative stitches in your embroidery software that you can put in here. The other nice thing about building this in software is you are not restricted to a certain width of stitch. You know, if your machine is a 5mm stitch or a 9mm stitch, you aren't limited to that in embroidery. You can put whatever you want. So there I have my shape. I'm going to lay this down over the top of my shape. A little bit of glue stick on the back of this will hold it in place. We don't have to sew the pentagon the shape. We can just go ahead and sew our next stitching line, which will be our placement line. And we'll just continue then to add
those wonderful
fabrics.
Pieces. And I think it's so fascinating. It tells you exactly where to put the next one, too. Now, thank you so very much. And this is one of my very favorite things is crazy patch, especially in the hoop. And now I have some beautiful hand embroidery to share with you. I am pleased to have as my guest today my very dear friend Gloria McKinnon from Australia. She is an internationally known teacher and the author of 16 books. For 18 years, the presenter of a weekly needlework segment on the Today Show in Australia. She has edited many Australian quilting and embroidery magazines, and she's a contributor to So Beautiful magazine. Gloria, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you for inviting me. Today I'd like to share ribbon stitch with our viewers. Ribbon stitch sometimes is referred to as Japanese stitch, but it's a fairly simple stitch, and then we just change the colour and change the placement. That's a really good example for us to be able to start with to see. And what I'd like to do also, though, is to show how I start when I thread the ribbon. I just thread it in the normal way through and then put the tip of the needle into the ribbon, so the end that went through first, and then pull this long end. And so what that means is that I can then, well, if I drop the needle, it's still on my ribbon. It means I can use more of the ribbon. I can use right up to there. And then I just use a knot on the end, and I call this one a quilter's knot. I just wrap that around. I mean, some people don't use a knot, and I always say, you know, if using a knot offends you, don't. Yeah, it's as easy as that, don't use one. And so that's how I would start with it. Now, what I wanted to show here is that if we use the ribbon in different sizes, this here is just 2mm ribbon, and so you get quite a small flower working with it there. Then if we look at this one here, it's 4mm, and so we're getting a much larger flower, and of course the petals are larger. And then here I've got a 7mm ribbon, and then down here I've got 13mm, so that's making a much larger one. So then if we start with just holding it, and I think if we demonstrate in the 7, it's easier to see. So I've come through from the back, and then I'm just going to smooth the ribbon. I'm going to take the time to smooth the ribbon so that it's sitting down flat, and then I'm going to put the needle in at the length that I want that petal to be. Now, if I do it in green, as I've done up here with the 7mm, well, of course, then it's a leaf. You know, it's no longer a petal, but it's the same stitch, and all I've done is change the colour and the placement. And then I'm just going to drop the needle, and then come above, and then do the same again. lay it down. And I think I came from a cross-stitch background, so I was used to just picking up the needle and working with the thread, and I really had to work at taking the time to manipulate the ribbon. See, doing just what I'm doing there now, making the ribbon do what I want and just manipulating it until it sits down flat. So now I'm going to drop the needle, pull it through gently until I get that point, because if we think about petals, leaves, they have a point from there. And I've kept my thumb, my thumbnail there. Now my thumb is on it so that it can't go anywhere. And then I'm going to come over to this side here. And then I'm going to do the same over here. Now, I like to call this a clock face placement. And so if we look at this, you can see, because I actually don't know anyone that can go easily around a circle with 8 petals. So if we look into this one here, you can see this was my first one at 12 o'clock. Okay. Then this one was 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then I just put 1 in between them. And so then that divides that out for me really easily. So that's what I'm doing here. It's, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I just went over to 9 o'clock first, but I mean, it's the same thing. It's just, now I'm going to go over here to the 3 o'clock one, just out of order. And so if we lay it down. Now, if we were wanting in a pink, so I won't continue because I think that that's, we're just duplicating that there. I would put another one in between those. But if we look here, where I did this one, Martha, in the pink, and I haven't changed any knowledge. I still have that same leaf that I've done there, same stitch, I'm sorry, done there. But then what I've done is just around it, I have put a fly stitch in green. And so if I come up on the side, I'm just going to duplicate this one. So just in a thread, coming around that and down to there, and down to there, and that puts a calyx on it. And so then I think I've got a rosebud, so I could have an arrangement of those. I could have those so that they would be climbing up an arbor, and so I really have got that same stitch over and over.
Well, it's absolutely beautiful, and I love the little beads in the center.
Yes, and I didn't mention that I can use beads or French knots in the center.
Okay,
thank you for that.
Gloria, thank you so much. And now I'd like to share a piece from my vintage collection with you. This dress has the most beautiful hand embroidery. I can't wait to share it with you. All of this work is done by hand. You can see the outline of the neckline, then it comes down the front, and you can see the open work there and the beautiful embroidery. Now I'm going to pull the sleeves over so you can see it just has a very simple cuff, really. Now come down. I have to hold this skirt out so you can really see it. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful embroidery. Coming down, wonderful flowers, almost a heavy embroidery, a padded satin stitch. Then the released tucks have more fullness on the skirt, and then coming down, just the simple tucks and a little bit of lace insertion on the bottom. Let me turn it around. These dresses are so pretty on the back too. To share with you that actually there is hand embroidered, let me show you this. Hand embroidery that comes down the little covering that covers the snaps, which the dress was closed with snaps, and more embroidery that even goes down the back of the skirt. Can you even imagine the time that was spent making this beautiful dress? I don't know if it were a special, I'm sure it was a special occasion dress, but I don't know if it were a wedding dress or just a beautiful dress. For my Sewing from the Heart today, I have a letter from Evelyn Vanderzan from Oregon. There's a group of ladies and one gentleman who meet in Forest Grove, Oregon, called the Lullaby Quilts, and they sew baby quilts for several hospitals in the Portland area. They send stacks of small, lap-sized creations to be given to the babies in the NICUs of these hospitals. Once each year, St. Vincent's Hospital hosts a reunion for all former intensive care patients and their parents. The sewing group usually has a table with some of their quilts displayed. It is such a heartwarming time to hear from many of those parents how the quilts brighten their babies' worlds as well as that of their parents. What would otherwise have been a cold, sterile setting became more homelike and comforting during these trying times. They've also made pillows for breast cancer patients. Thank you so much, Evelyn, for writing. Thank you for coming to my sewing room today. Won't you join me next time?